Hello, anyone out there? Okay, here we go again. We do not live in a logical world. Okay, we do not live in a logical world. I'm trying to fix it up. Okay, we do not live in a logical world. I've got to talk loud because I'm not sure if it's coming through or not. Sometimes when I talk at my normal level, it doesn't record properly, so I'm going this way. I haven't got very long, so I'll just say we do not live in a logical world. That's the basic premise of everything. Now, that's for each person to decide for themselves how much is real around them, how much is logical, how much is fact, how much is fiction. I'm saying we don't live in a logical world, therefore there's very little that is actually real. Now, we are here, us humans, right? This is what I'm putting, the idea. We are here, but we live in the logical world, but we ourselves are not really logical, or not meant to be logical, but we are living in a logical world, so we have been transformed into logical beings. But we're not meant to be logical because there is no logic, because we really don't live in a logical world. So what I'm trying to say is it's all at odds. Now, that doesn't make any sense, I know, but if you think about it this way, just from that point of view, that if the world is not really as real as what we think, and it's not logical, and it doesn't really fit the patterns and all the things that we think we see, touch, smell, taste, all that, if most of it is, I'm not saying that that part of it isn't real for us, it is, but it isn't the true picture, is what I'm saying. It's only a surface thing. So that's like everything else, isn't it? You can taste your food, but you don't know what's in it, do you? You know what I'm saying? Or, well, you might think you do, but what I'm saying is you really only eat it. You don't actually know them, the so-called molecular component of it, or the microscopic component, shall we say. You don't. I mean, maybe some scientists do, and even they, I don't know, because if we don't live in a logical world, then they also live in this illogical world, but they think it's logical. So even they are operating at a disadvantage, shall we say, unless they know more than what the rest of us do. You know what I'm saying? It'd be a bit like being, you know, the whoever, whatever is in charge of this domain, they know that it's what sort of world it is, that it's not a logical world, but we are not in contact with them, I don't think. We have our beliefs and things, but we're not really, even our belief systems, we're worshipping something different to what perhaps is really there. It's a bit like people's concept of God, right? Some people might imagine him to be a man in the sky, another person might imagine him to be a fat Buddha, someone else might imagine him to be a kind of effigy of male, female stuff. So, all the different images and all the different ones we've had down through the years and what we have, it's all a different concept. So, what the true one really is, we may not have actually seen. but I'm going to try to come from a concept that the God, I say God, but it is, see, a God is only a God if we make it a God. What we worship, what we bow down to, what we believe in, that becomes our God. Doesn't make it a truth. It could be a truth, but it might not be. I'm not going to say what each person's truth or God should be, okay? And I do not, and it's not for me to answer that. It's for each person to find their own truth and their own God, if there is a God. Now, I'm just going to put forward glimpses of ideas from the past, present, etc., and you can make of them what you will. You can take them, you can throw them away, you can say that's interesting, you can say that does relate to my religion. You can do what you want with it, okay? I'm not going to lay down rules and laws and beliefs for anyone. I might have my own, and even there it's a developmental, because I'm not a brilliant mind and I'm not enlightened, as I said before. All human beings, I believe, should be. I'm not. I'm aware. That's at the lower level. In other words, you know that you should be, but you're not. You're aware of things, but you haven't elevated yourself into the so-called higher realms. And there's not that many people that have. There are some on the planet. I'm not sure what the numbers would be. I only know I should be there, but I'm not. And that's largely due to environmental factors, I would say, because it's not for the want of trying, but if you've got if you're trying to reach for the light and you've got a lot of dark coming at you, then you're going to be held back. The ones that have reached it perhaps have either been stronger and better and more advanced anyway, to where they can defeat the darker forces, or to where those darker forces just have not hit them. Because I'm pretty sure that, that if you get to a certain awareness, then you should be able to go higher. That's that's what I see anyway. But anyway, forgetting that, I've got to get onto the track now, because it's very easy for me to divert. We live on this illogical world, right? But we are logical in it, because we're not meant to be logical, because that is not our true, this may not be our true nature. I heard a John Lennon song. It just come to me yesterday, in fact. It's not a well-known song. In fact, it's hardly a song, really. But essentially, it's where at the start of the song, he says, God is a concept. God is a concept. God is a concept. God is a concept by which we measure our pain. God is a concept by which we measure our pain. God is a concept by which we measure our pain. I'll say it again. That's what he says in the song. He says, I'll say it again just to make sure you don't get it. God is a concept. God is a concept. You could use another word if you want to. You could say concept, construct, by which we measure our pain. And I'm just putting out his words there for you to think about, because I don't know what you will make of it. I don't know what to make. God is a concept by which we measure our pain. Okay, I've said it a few times now. So what does that mean to me? What does that mean to you? And then, but then the song goes on, right? And basically he lists every single, he sort of starts by saying, he was one of the Beatles, John Lennon. He starts by saying, I don't believe in the Beatles. I don't believe in Zinnemann, that was Bob Dylan. In other words, and I don't believe in Buddha. I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe in any of. Basically, he doesn't believe in any of the people, gods, uh, anyone of any importance that's represented anything. He doesn't believe, and finally at the end it says, just believe in me, and that. Right now, that's interesting. So God is a concept by which we measure our pain. And then you don't believe in any of these constructs, any of these concepts, any of these, even saying don't believe in him, in the Beatles, and in all the stuff he did, which, so they're not believing in any of that and saying that God is a construct by which we measure our pain. So that's kind of negative, I would say, in a way, wouldn't you? But at any rate, because it's like saying that it's there for you to measure your pain. So who has created that concept, and to where it's all about pain? Now, I think that even people that follow any religion, whether whoever or whatever they believe in, they need to think about that. Is that part of their religion? Is it about, pain? That's something to think about. And like I say, whatever you bow down to, whether it even be true, because I'm not saying that you couldn't be bowing down to something that is real, in a way, but is it still based on that? Is it still more about pain, in a way? Is it more about a negativity, as opposed to a positive? Now, that's something, once again, I'm not putting it across because I just want to put stuff out there, but I don't want to be dictating, because I think that's another thing too. Do not our religions dictate a bit to us? Is that not part of pain too? I don't know, there again, because you have to follow certain doctrines, you do have to follow rules. There are guidelines, shall we say, to say the least. Now, was it the man Jesus himself who said, I could have it wrong, someone certainly said it, because I'm no expert on these things, I'm just putting it out there. Did he not say, when asked about gods and who and what he was and all this sort of stuff, ye are all gods, we are all gods? What does that mean? What does that mean? What do you think it means? Like, if you believe in one God, then how could you be a god? There's a bit of a contradiction there, isn't there? Like, there's a lot of contradictions to even your major things if you look at it. I'm saying, think about it. Is there a truth there? Does it fit? How can we all be gods if we are bowing down to one God? Is the God that we bow down to a bigger God than us? Are we really gods ourselves? Do we have any control? Do we have any abilities? Well, we live in an illogical world, right? So we're coming from that premise. That's the title. So that's where we're coming from. So that means that if we behave logically, but we're in an illogical world, then we are at a disadvantage, surely. Whereas if we behaved illogically and threw out all our logic, then we would be operating correctly in this illogical world. Of course, most people think we live in a logical world, so they think that if we are logical, then we are operating correctly in this world. And that is okay if you are at that level, right? And if that is the best level you can get to. Okay, so that is kind of at a practical level. That's at the material level. So that's what I'm saying, is that if you believe that we live in a logical world, look around you, do we? But, you know, I think that's funny, but it's not funny really at all. But at the same time, if you think we live in a logical world, well, okay, fair enough. You know, I would say that even if you believe in this practice, even if you believe this world is actually real and everything it appears to be, I still think it's gone out of logic in I don't know whether it's in recent times. It's not in recent times, but certainly it appears to be going even more that way lately. But that could be because we have become even more and more logical. So therefore, the world will naturally escape from us more, if the premise is correct. You know, it's for you to decide. You know, but this world does seem to reward the logic and the practical, doesn't it? You know, like if you operate in that, we are shown that those that bow down to this material world are rewarded with much material things. Now, that's nice, and I'm sure those people are on top of the world, and they may even be religious. I'm sure they have, some of them, the rich and rewarded, and you know, the ones that we even the humans that we bow down to, shall we say, that we admire and think are great, they are rewarded for their bowing down to this logical world, what they think is a logical world. They're rewarded while is that correct? You know, that might be nice, but what if even their rewards are still very limited to the rewards that they should have if they did not operate that way? That's an interesting thing. That's where I'm headed in thinking and in putting this forward. But it is a different question, because it does mean that you have to accept that this world is a false world, and that it is a illusion, and that it is illogical, but we have to operate in it in a logical way, because that is the construct of it, and because the the system and if there is a God, there certainly is a being that has created this domain and controls it. Now, if you bow down to that being, and it is their domain, it is theirs. It's more a matter of deciding whether you are also theirs, I think, perhaps. Because if you bow down to it, you will be rewarded in this domain for it. I suppose you could take it a bit biblically, where Jesus, I suppose there was that scene where we're very familiar with, even though I don't like to take the religious turns, but there is that scene where Jesus is on the hill looking down over all the Satan's domain, shall we say, the devil's domain, and he's talking to the devil, and he's like, if you will bow down and worship me, all this is yours. All the riches of the world, anything you want. For some reason, this man called Jesus walks away. Now, why would he walk away from all that? He's in his domain. That is his world. That is the he is in this world that is controlled and made by this being. We would use the word Satan because that's what they use in the Bible. Whatever. Okay, so we would use that term. I do not like to name things because I think it's disrespectful if you don't really know what the correct title is. But that's all I can do because I'm going from a biblical thing, so I think that's fair enough. And he walks away from it. Now, why would he do that? That's an interesting point because he's in that domain, so he could have easily accepted it. And it would seem like a good thing rather than turning away and having nothing. And so he must have thought that even though he is being offered all the riches and the mansions and everything that this material world can offer, that it is still nothing in comparison to what he at his true self and true high level is capable of and can have. Is that how it's supposed to be? Am I interpreting it correct? Because otherwise, why would he have walked away? If someone offers me the mansions and the riches, it's, geez, I have to admit, no matter how spiritual I am, I'm going to be very tempted. But it's a logical world. We live in this material realm, and that is the realm of the creator that created this realm. But are we meant to be in it? Is it our natural realm? It's a bit like saying, is this world we live in now the way it is, where it is very unnatural, really. Unnatural in a natural, if you're talking about nature and natural, it's a very unnatural realm, becoming more and more unnatural. Is that good for us or bad for us? That's what, this is what I'm putting there. Are we to elevate ourselves more by going along the path that we are now choosing, advancing ourselves that way? Is that to our advancement? Or should we be taking a different path? And what other path is there? So Obviously, Jesus didn't take the material path, did he? Most humans do. And we do live in the material world, so it is very hard to bypass it. You do have to be a very enlightened human being, I would say. And like I say, it's very hard to be enlightened when you are bogged down by overwhelming physical in this world. Just to get by, we have to deal with the physical. It's overloaded onto us. It is a concept, a construct. God is a concept, a construct by which we measure our pain, because the physical domain is very painful. You know, unless you're one of the ones that bow down, like I say, and worship, and then you're rewarded. But even that may not be, like I say, you look at, we envy the rich and the famous and all this, but what price do they have to pay for that? That's interesting. Are they going to be, will they be as rewarded continuously? Like obviously they're rewarded in the moment. Will they continue to be rewarded as time goes on? And even the concept of time, like how long are you rewarded? You know, like how long are we here on this planet? How many years? You know, I don't know, because I do not know the answers to these things. I'm just putting it there. But even if you're religious, you're supposed to believe that this is not our full life. That, you know, even religious people believe in afterlife, don't they? But I don't think there's too many religious people that actually don't buy into this reality. They might say, oh yes, I'm going afterwards to something, but they're still buying into this reality while they're here, most of them. I think most people are. I think it's almost impossible not to. And also, even those that do believe in that, are they operating on a daily basis as though that is true? Are they really following the truth? Or are they just dogmatically following blindly a religious doctrine? You know, do they ever question that maybe even their written word might have got misconstrued over the many, many, many centuries? Does everything that is in their doctrine fit their so-called benevolent gods? That's interesting, because I think there are a lot of contradictions, and I think that it's worth thinking about, looking into maybe. You might. I mean, see, the trouble is when you're dealing with the idea of gods, you tend to say, well, it's God, so it's not to be questioned, you know. But, you know, even that is, you know, like if then you take the other thing that Jesus said, or someone said, that we are all gods, well then perhaps we are allowed to question a little bit too, even the gods. Just a thought, because that kind of implies that we are all part of the God thing. If we are all gods, most people would say that's not possible, because we have been very much. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't what you would call a godlike presence, certainly a creator of this realm, so that would be how we would see a godlike presence. But what I'm saying is, you know, that still is the creator of this realm still our God? And if we are also gods, do we not have should we not be having some interplay, some control over this domain, even though it's not really our domain? We're not, because if it was created by someone else, something else, then it's not, we didn't create it. evidently. But we could still have some, well, we have the free choice, if nothing else, even though we might be totally directed by everything around us. We still do have that free choice in a way. But but if we don't exercise that, then then it does become totally the domain of the creator of the domain, shall we say. Now, that's these are all choices that we make, or that some of us make anyway. Most of the time, I think we're not really making choices at all. It is just being created around us in a way. But anyway, I think I've rambled enough, and like I say, I don't think I'm just putting stuff out there that way. You know, it's knowing that if we are aware of things, but we are still not, once see, some people have become aware, and we are supposed to be more aware, I think, but then you can make a choice. But if you're not aware of what the choices are, then you can't really make a choice, and you couldn't make a correct choice, or even what's the word? What's this thing? To where you can't make an unbiased choice, because you haven't got both sides. You need to have both sides of the argument with all these things. You need to have both sides of the arguments of everything put to you before you can make a proper decision. A correct decision, or even I'm trying to think of the word. it's very nervy making these sorts of things. I know what I'm thinking myself, and some of the ideas and some of the things, they just come to me. The concepts come and the different things come, and like I say, I only have to listen to something on the TV or go back to a song, and I'm like, hey, now I realise that that's meant to mean something more, and I'm meant to try to analyse that or think about it. And perhaps putting these things out there to you, it may not be such a good thing, because everything is personal, and if you can get it personally, then you will get it. Whereas, whilst I might see that God is a concept thing a certain way, if I put it to someone else, they're just going to see it as words. It's not going to really ring true unless they really think about it and get that the same way. Also, if you're not familiar with the song, it might just seem like a few rambling words too, because I can sort of hear the song and I remember it from many years ago, but it only just occurred to me now that gentleman was that he had perhaps changed his ideas a bit over the years, because don't forget that the man John Lennon was very well rewarded in the practical material world for his services. So he definitely served this domain for many a year and was rewarded. It struck me that in his later years, he was starting to diverge away from that and think a little bit that there was more to than just this physical realm. That's how it struck me from the songs and from the music and from what I have heard of him, and from listening to a few interviews and different things, which is interesting, because you would think that you would have a devotee for life when you work in a certain domain and are rewarded at the very highest level for working in that domain and for serving that particular domain and entity, shall we say. That's interesting too. What did he discover did he discover that despite being rewarded at a material level, at the very highest level, that there was still something more? A bigger reward, perhaps? I do not know. It's interesting because it did strike me that he did do a bit of an about turn at some point. Um, you know, having known those sort of celebrities, shall we say, a little bit, not personally, but followed them and followed the music and stuff over the years, like so many other people. In fact, like I say, even like he was saying, most people were bowing down even to the celebs and even to the musicians, and that's a dangerous thing too, where they are representing, they are becoming the gods. John Lennon himself did make that controversial statement at the peak of the Beatles' fame, where he said the Beatles are bigger than Jesus, and copped a bit of flack for it, although it didn't diminish their popularity. And he looked upon it just as almost a fact, because at that time, certainly, probably the numbers would have been much greater than those that followed Jesus or any of those sort of people. But at the same time, it seemed also to indicate how easily people can bow down to anything and be swayed and pulled along just by a group of musicians, even to where there is an idolic worship. Um, you know, and if the statement "we are all gods" makes any sense, that doesn't seem right. That that one human being should be elevated to a higher level. I mean, that, like I say, it's up to us who you bow down to, who you make. A god is a concept, so it's who you want to make as a god, what you want to believe. And sometimes it's not even what we want to believe, because a lot of the time it's what's presented to you. I mean, if you're brought up from the day you're born under a certain concepts, God concepts, shall we say, it's going to be pretty hard to diverge from those, I think, because that will be your whole being. That you will think that is you. You won't ever think that you're meant to improve yourself. You will think it is only through the God thing that you will advance. Only through the interaction with this God being, even though you do become aware, I think, to some, I mean, some, there again, I'm not going to go into it, because I think some worship on this planet, which I'm not going to go into, they are much more in contact with the direct being, the true God of this planet. By the God, I mean the creator and the controller of the planet. Like I say, I'm not saying that it's necessarily a, direct creator of us. Certainly there has been influence, which does create great influence, great influence. And how we are influenced, how we see things, that does determine our reality. So, how would we all be if we had no influences? How would humans really operate if they weren't influenced by everything? How would they think? How would they behave? Where would they be now if they had a lot less information and a lot less influence? Would they be much worse off, like they believe, with their knowledge and all their influence? Or would they be much better off? That's a question too. I'm going to leave you with that. And it's for each person to think about. Some people won't have to think about it. The few that know will probably not have to think about it. Those that are enlightened already will know much more of what is the truth, shall we say. and they will even see it. Even I have to scratch for it because I can't see it. And the rest of people, a lot of other people, will be totally in the dark. So it will be very hard for them to find their way out of this maze and to accept, well, or to just, because you don't have to, you still have a choice. I mean, I've no doubt there are some people who, even knowing a certain type of truth, may still well decide to stick with this illogical world. That might seem a bit strange because it might seem that it's limited, but we are used to it. It's cozy and safe for us. It's very hard to venture out into the unknown when you've never experienced the unknown. Not everyone's an adventurer, myself included, but, you know, for some people the rewards are great even to stay here. And for some people, I say people, but, you know, there are different types of people, don't forget. And when I say that, I don't mean like just that they might look a bit different or this or that. I mean, there really are different versions of human beings in a funny kind of way. So there are some so-called humans, probably what I would call less of human, but, you know, that's not derogatory. That's just the way that they are. Some people, the way we're going these days, we like the technological type thing. So, you know, that is not really an insult because that's the way a lot of humans are going and thinking anyway. But what I am saying is that certain types of human beings, or beings, shall we say, will be happy in this illogical world and will make the best of it and will actually thrive better here. But for other humans, they will be at a loss by perhaps participating so much in it. Now, that, you know, but at the same time, the ones that are not as human, I think, will actually have to stick up and defend the humans, even though they won't want to, and they will see them as opposition and will see that they're not the same as them and that they will think different. But they will defeat themselves too if they do not stand with them, I think, because this reality needs that, you know. They will not realise that. But it's a bit like saying, oh, supposing you say, oh, well, we don't need nature, we can create everything synthetically now. You know, I'm trying to use some sort of example. And that may seem logical, that if you are not natural, that you will not care and that you will go artificial, synthetic, right? But it may not really be beneficial to your body in the long run, you know? In the long run, it could lead to you dying out. So that's how I look at this whole planet, even though it is made up of a whole lot of different types of beings, even humans that are different, even if you want to say human, non-human, whatever, animals, this, everything. They all actually kind of need one another, even the things that are opposed. And that's the danger, because most humans and most entities are not going to see that. So they will try to get rid of that which appears to be in opposition and different to them, little realising that that is essential for their continued existence. I haven't explained that. I haven't got down to the nitty gritty. I'm just putting it out there and it's going to sound wacky. But I am saying that we need everything and we must nurture everything, even that which we think is different to us. Particularly the more artificial things need to be very aware of it because it's very easy for them to dismiss the natural. The natural can survive without the artificial. The artificial cannot survive without the natural. That's my little sad theory. It is a bit of a theory, I suppose. I think it's a possibility. Something to think about. But, you know, the old saying, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And look, it's kind of like the artificial doesn't think it needs the natural. Why would it? The natural knows that it doesn't need the artificial, not the genuine. But the artificial does need the natural in this domain because we do not live in a logical world. That I would have to explain and have to really get down to the nitty-gritty. And even I don't fully understand it. I'm aware of it. I've been made aware of it, but I haven't reached, like I say, I'm not an enlightened being like some. I'm not even remotely there. But I am aware. Awareness is something. Sometimes it's actually hard being aware when you're living in when you are living in an illogical world, and you're aware, but you haven't reached, like the man Jesus said, be in this world, but not of this world. So the enlightened beings are in this world, but they're not of this world. Whereas if you're aware, you know that, but you're still in this world and of this world. And while you're in that, you're still operating logically in an illogical world. Dear. I'm not a very good example for all these things, and I'm not putting the argument across well, because you really do need to know a lot more of the base kind of if you're dealing with in this world and talking about things, you do actually have to talk logically, because otherwise people are not interested and they don't believe it, because we do live in an illogical world, but everyone thinks it's logical. Basically, unless people see something in front of them or actually can have it proven as a so-called fact, even though proving things as a fact is a bit of a joke in this world, because if what appear to be facts and logic and even the way you reason and do things is all a bit of a fantasy and a little bit of an illusion, because it's not a logical world, that it does become a real difficult thing. It becomes a minefield, a maze. It really does. And so you actually have to, a bit like the Matrix movie, you do actually have to see the Matrix, as he said in that Matrix movie, which I only saw recently. There's a lot of, there's a real reality there, that you could tell people about the Matrix. Some people might even want to see the Matrix. They might even want to think that it's a possibility. Well, you know, at least they would speculate. But until they actually see it, it's very hard for them to really have a belief in it. And that is so true. So it does require a lot more effort if you don't actually see something. You really are piecing together things, and you do have to think all the time and analyse and be skeptical of a lot. And most people are not. They actually accept so much to be real. And once you do that, you cannot then see that. You could never see the Matrix. And so you will think the Matrix is real. You know, so that's the thing. And if we do look at that kind of movie, that becomes, we do think we're looking at fantasy. But hey, we live in a very technological world, so who's to say, you know, if what is here now in front of me is any more or less real than what I'm seeing on my TV or anywhere else? Can you discern now? Have we not separated so much from the real world? If there even is a real world, well, there isn't really. There might have been, I'm not going to go there, but there isn't a real. If you're talking about that kind of thing, then it's a different domain, isn't it? It's a different domain. Yeah. I shall leave it now and hope that 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 there's a tidbit there for someone anyway.